Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tech Tuesday evening, where we've been covering that supercomputer that we take for granted, our brain. And this, just by the way, is going to be my final broadcast for this year, because my brain needs a bit of a break and just to have a little bit of a refresh so I can come back and hopefully bring you better value or more value as we start off in 2024. I will let you know when we'll get going again, but it might be the second week of January. But we've been covering the brain and how it works and what it does and what we need to feed it. And last week we ended off on that kickstart that a lot of us, I wouldn't say we all, but a lot of us need and possibly almost rely on to get going in the morning, and that's caffeine. Because it's always good to have that boost. I like to think I'm not addicted to caffeine. I don't have a great deal of it during the day. I do start my day off with a cup of tea, followed about an hour or so later with a cup of coffee. And when I'm done with this tonight, I'll hopefully have another cup of coffee, and that'll be my caffeine for the day. But I do know some people need to have their caffeine boost every hour or so. But caffeine is good, and I'll cover that as a subject again one of these days. But let me share my screen and just go with the next thing. So we're going to start over here. Let's just add a few things over here. So we've been talking and thinking about thinking and how our supercomputer works and how do we keep it fed. So we've gone through some of those things. I said last week we ended off with talking about the boost, which is caffeine. And this week we're going to talk about that next good thing that a lot of us take for granted, or should I say some of us take for granted, because a lot of people suffer with it or suffer from lack of it. And that's the importance of sleep. Now, Dr. Jim McAfee has got an excellent talk on this, and he refers to it as vitamin S, the S being sleep. That is how important it is. Sleep is a basic physiological need. It takes up a significant portion, around about 1/3 of our time. Babies and young children require significantly more sleep than adults, most of whom need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Have you ever heard that saying, sleeping like a baby? Well, that, in my opinion, is more like waking up every 2 hours crying. However, babies do need a lot more sleep than what we think they do, and they do sleep a lot more than what we think they do as well. Sleep plays an important role in memory consolidation, brain development, and emotional processing. And from a medical perspective, sleep also plays a big role in healing, which is why if somebody's in a major accident and they've got what we call polytrauma, so they've got a number of injuries, or they're very, very sick, what the doctors will do is they'll put them into a forced sleep. They put them into what's known as a medically induced coma, which allows the entire body to settle down, rest, and heal. And the healing is significantly better that way. When we sleep, our brains reorganize and recharge, removing the metabolic waste that has accumulated throughout the day and repairing damage from free radicals. Many studies have demonstrated that chronic insufficient sleep can result in impaired memory, slowed reflexes, trouble concentrating, decreased immune system effectiveness, and negative moods. And I've been told that this is one of the torture weapons that they use on prisoners of war, or have been used on prisoners of war, where they force the prisoner to stay awake for 3, 4, 5 days at a time until they pretty much lose their mind. So anytime that they start to nod off, bright light is shone, they make a lot of noise, and they force that person to stay awake continuously. Now, we've all heard of doctors and emergency personnel going 24 hours a day. Well, they do. They can work for 24 hours a day. I've pulled stunts like that before where I've worked almost around the clock. But I can tell you, it catches up. And after 24 hours, you do start to lose focus, concentration, and a lot of other things. And they say when driving exhausted is the same as driving drunk. The neurotransmitters play key roles in regulating sleep, and GABA is the most influential inhibitory neurotransmitter for promoting sleep. But others, including serotonin and dopamine, also play roles. Growing evidence shows vitamin D is involved in sleep regulation, and that vitamin D deficiency is linked to increased risk of sleep difficulties, shorter sleep duration, and waking up in the middle of the night, quite often crying. Some tips to get a better night's sleep include staying physically active during the day, setting consistent times to go to bed and wake up, limiting bright lights and electronics before bed, and avoiding alcohol and caffeine close to bedtime. And I will add limiting blue light, in other words, screens, your phone, your pad, your TV, your computer, all of those things that emit blue light. Try and stay away from them for a good hour or two before you go to bed, because that can also disrupt your sleep. Now, the next thing we need to think about is drinking. And I don't mean alcohol. A normal adult's head contains about 1.4 liters, or almost 6 cups of fluid. The next time you say, I've got some water in my ear, maybe it could be water, but it might be your brain leaking as well. While it is well known that water is essential for our survival, only recently has water's role in the maintenance of brain function been explored. Who would have thought that drinking sufficient water would clear your thoughts? And I often tell patients, you need to drink more water because it is so important for so many different things. It's good for your joints. It oils your joints. It's obviously good to keep yourself hydrated. It's good to help to lower the risk of blood clots because your blood is 70% water. If you're not drinking enough water, what happens? Your blood gets thicker and you stand a good risk of clots forming. Same with your brain. So if you're not drinking enough water, your brain is like a sea sponge. It's becoming hard and brittle and it's not operating optimally. So water is vital. Think of it as the oil. An early study found that soldiers brought to varying degrees of dehydration experienced a decline in cognitive abilities such as short-term memory, sustained attention, and psychomotor function, or psychomotor function. The severity of decline in cognitive ability was dependent on the severity of dehydration. So you haven't drunk enough water today. I'm getting a bit fuzzy tonight. I've got a headache. I'm not thinking clear. Well, drink some water because your brain is crying out to you and it's yelling that it needs fluid. Several different water intervention studies have found that giving water to participants increased performance in measures such as visual sustained attention, short-term memory, and reaction time. However, other studies have had mixed results. And in my opinion, as an aside, I think a lot of medical studies, people go out and they decide they're going to do a study. And they decide what they're looking for. And the whole idea is to prove their theory through experimentation. That is simply how pretty much all medical research works. Somebody has an idea, they want to prove it, so they develop an experiment to prove it. So if somebody decides that they want that this guy has said you need to drink extra water to think clearly, another guy is going to say nonsense and we'll prove it. So there's always somebody that's going to try and prove you wrong. I think the only thing that people haven't been able to prove wrong yet is the law of gravity. There's probably quite a few other laws as well, but no matter what you do, you cannot overcome gravity, because at some stage it is going to catch up to you. This field of water studies is still in its infancy with relatively few studies. And again, my personal opinion, you cannot patent water. So it's not really economically viable to do too many research studies, because research studies cost money. And if you cannot recoup your money afterwards, an investment where you're not actually recouping your investment is really a waste of money. However, accumulating evidence does suggest that dehydration has a negative impact on cognitive abilities. So be sure to stay properly hydrated. And if in doubt, my suggestion is rather make sure you're drinking sufficient water during the day. Hey, you might be wrong, and you might still be a bit fuzzy-headed, but that goes together with sleeping. If you're not getting enough sleep, not getting enough water, you are not going to be thinking clearly. The National Academy of Medicine set an adequate intake for total water at 3.7 liters for men and 2.7 liters for women per day. It's 15.5 cups for men or 11.5 cups for women. How many cups of water have you drunk today? I can tell you, I have not had 3.7 liters. I have had a little over a liter of pure water, but I haven't come close to 3.7 liters, and I seldom do. So now we're going to get on to what does Neolife recommend as brain food. The first one is flavonoid complex. That's this little guy over here. Flavonoid complex provides a wide array of flavonoids representative of all flavonoid classes. The flavones, the flavonols, the flavonones, the anthocyanins, and the catechins, as they naturally occur in the human food chain of fruits and vegetables. Neolife's exclusive blend of flavonoid-rich extracts and concentrates is derived from whole foods like green tea, cranberries, oranges, kale, and others. The next thing is Vegan D. Now, I know that currently this is not available in South Africa. It is on its way, and it should be here hopefully within the next couple of weeks. But we do still have vitamin A and D. So the vitamin D is the important bit. Our Vegan D contains 25 micrograms of vitamin D per tablet, which is 125% of the daily value. It provides a combination of vitamin D2 and D3, which are sourced from mushrooms and reindeer lichen, one of the only vegan sources of D3. And before anybody says, but we don't eat lichen, so therefore it can't be in the human food chain, this is incorrect. Reindeer lichen is something that is found in places like Norway and Sweden, and is actually used as a superfood by those inhabitants. And obviously the reindeer eat it as well, but it is used regularly by humans in those areas. Obviously, we're not going to see a lot of it here in South Africa. Vitamin D promotes a range of benefits like supporting proper calcium absorption to maintain strong teeth and bones, as well as normal nerve functioning and immune system health. The next one is vitamin B Co. Let me get my head out of the way. Vitamin B Co is a high potency formula that contains all 8 members of the dietarily essential B vitamin family, including folate, B6, and B12. Each tablet also contains 50 milligrams of choline. Go back a couple of episodes and I spoke about choline over there. Vitamin B Co also utilizes the threshold control technology for sustained release over a period of 6 hours, because vitamin B is water soluble. Therefore, it flushes out of your system relatively quickly. Same with vitamin C. And then my favorite one, which is Salmon Oil Plus. If you haven't had this, please start taking it, because you are missing out. This has been clinically tested salmon oil that provides the standardized amounts of 8 omega-3s, including DHA, EPA, and DPA. One serving of Salmon Oil Plus provides approximately the same amount of omega-3s as one serving of fresh salmon. Ultra pure, all sources are screened for over 200 potential contaminants and meet or exceed even the most vigorous global standards. So my conclusion to this whole thing: everything we think, do, or feel is the result of communication between neurons in our brain and our nervous system. Neurons transmit signals using a combination of excitatory, inhibitory, and modulatory neurotransmitters. Proper cognitive and motor function depend on a delicate balance of neurotransmitter action, but this balance can be disrupted with age or other factors. Nobody can stop time, unfortunately, but there are factors within our control, like diet, sleep, and hydration, that can help to protect our brains and support cognitive function. Remember, your brain is an organ and needs exercise as well. That is the end of that. Does anybody have any comments or questions before I stop the recording?